Greetings. My name is Aaron Anderson, and I am a recent convert to the Catholic faith. I come into the church this Easter Vigil, 2025, and I just kind of wanted to put my conversion story out there on YouTube, just for the sake of doing so. My conversion story isn't as extravagant or remarkable as others I've seen. It is pretty mild. It's not that significant. I mean, it's significant for me because jumping from Protestantism to Catholicism is a pretty big jump. But anyway, I just want to give this story. Um, so my entire life, I was raised Lutheran. Both my parents were Lutheran. My dad was always raised Lutheran, but my mom was originally raised Catholic, kind of, because her parents, one of her parents was Lutheran, one of her parents was Catholic, and there was like kind of like a division going on. But she eventually left for Lutheranism. And both of them are on the more conservative side of things. So we went to uh, an LCMC church initially, and then later on in life, when I was like in middle school, we went to uh, an LCMS church, which is like arguably the most conservative Lutheran church in America. Lutheran subdenomination. It's a subdenomination. Um, but yeah, I never really liked going to church as a kid. It was something I dreaded every week. I wasn't interested in sitting down, singing songs, and uh, listening to the pastor preach. I was more interested about, having fun, playing video games, you know, playing because I was very young at the time. Uh, but despite, not really wanting to go to church, not wanting to read the Bible and whatnot, I was still like raised pretty well in the faith. I believed in Jesus. I believed in God. I believed in like the whole story of Jesus dying for our sins, everything like that. And as time went on, I became more exposed to the more serious parts of the faith, and um, eventually, I found myself in catechism class. Now, this isn't a Catholic catechism class. For those who don't know, Lutheranism has a catechism. It's called Luther's Small Catechism. And at the church I went to, we had a class for like people in middle school to go through this so they can be confirmed into the Lutheran church. And I was in this class and I didn't really care too much about the faith. I mean, I cared more than I did as a kid, obviously, but it was more like a secondhand thing. Like my life is first, the faith comes second. It was like that sort of thing. Um, but yeah, I didn't really take my faith seriously until about senior year of high school, winter of senior year specifically. Around this time, I was exposed to two particular YouTube channels, uh, creators. One was Cliff Connectly. He's been around longer than YouTube, but he has a YouTube channel where it's mostly videos of him going to colleges and, arguing for the Christian faith. Now, he's not a Lutheran, and he's like a non-denominational, I believe. But he is gifted. His arguing skills are he's very talented at apologetics. And listening to him was just fascinating because I never really took the faith seriously, and so being exposed to his arguments was like very enlightening, I guess you could say. Um, the second channel was Redeemed Zoomer, and he is a classical Protestant, specifically, I believe, a Calvinist Presbyterian, and he had some very good videos as well. Um, and there were like a bunch of other channels I watched, but those two in particular really drew me into Christianity and to like actually start taking the faith seriously. Um, and as I am learning more and more, there's this fear of hell that starts to like well up inside me because I'm reading more of the Bible. I'm at this time I begin to read the Bible more seriously, and I come across verses like um not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but only those who do the will of my Father. And then other verses like the parable in Matthew 25 where Jesus separates the sheep from the goats, stuff like that. And like faith without works is dead from James, like this sort of stuff. It really makes me question my salvation because as a Lutheran, I was always taught that salvation is by faith alone. All right. And I was questioning this. Like, if I have put my faith in Jesus, why do I have this fear of hell? Where is this coming from? And so I asked my pastor this, and he gave me the answer of, well, if you have a fear of hell, that's a good sign because it shows that you understand your spiritual condition. You understand that you need Jesus, and if you accept that, if you understand that and accept that you need Jesus, you're going to be fine. Maybe it's just the demons trying to make you afraid of hell. Like it was an answer like that. And for a while that answer actually sufficed. Like I was actually comfortable with that answer, but it always the fear of hell just kept coming back. I would always go back to the pastor, ask for another answer, and he would give something similar. It would just keep coming back. The fear of hell just kept coming back. Um, and yeah, it was scary, and I became exposed to near death experiences on YouTube as well, where people who like died clinically and like they saw Jesus and they were sent to hell. Like, and some of these people even like I'm not saying these are like these are like 100% credible, but some of these people who claim to have like had an afterlife experience had a faith in Jesus and yet they still went to hell. All right, like t you have to take their word for it in order to like actually believe it to be true, but it still made me uncomfortable. So that also played a role. Um, and so as I'm developing this fear of hell, I want answers. I want to have answers so I can feel better. Like I just wanted to feel better. I wanted to know I'm going to heaven. I just wanted to be saved. So I'm looking up answers and I come across Catholicism basically. And I was open. I was kind of open to Catholicism until I learned about one teaching they had, and that is there is no salvation outside the Catholic Church. Once I heard that, I'm like, that doesn't help at all. That makes me even more afraid. So I'm just gonna. My reaction was to just push Catholicism to the side, reject it, and just focus on Protestantism because I was also aware that the Orthodox Church also claimed to be the one true church. And so I pushed those two to the side and I focus on Protestantism because I wanted a more accepting, like more a more accepting theology that says as long as you believe in Jesus, you'll be fine. And so I looked for answers. I looked at the Bible, but I also came across this website called gotquestions.org. It is not a Lutheran website. I knew it wasn't a Lutheran website, but I still used it. It is a Baptist non-denominational website, I think. And so it gave some pretty good answers. It was based on scripture alone, minus the 7 books, but I didn't really care about that at the time. I thought the Bible was a 66 book canon, but whatever. Um, at the time, I didn't care. It was based on scripture, and that's all I cared about. But as I'm learning more, as I'm like getting more answers from gotquestions.org, I'm starting to get more comfortable. But there's this thing I come across, this teaching that gotquestions.org says is true, and that is that baptism does not save you. That baptism is just a outward symbol of like a profession of faith. Like and you should be baptized as an adult after you make a profession of faith. Now, as a Lutheran, I was always taught that baptism saves you, that you should baptize your infants. And so this really gave me some cognitive dissonance. Like, what? Like, do I have to be baptized again? I was questioning myself, and so it just added more confusion. It answered some questions pretty well, but it also just added more confusion because there was like disagreements between Lutheranism and non-denominationalism. Um, so this kind of continues, and as this is happening, I'm still shunning Catholicism to the side. Um, Now around March, I'm in high school at the time. This is my senior year, and I am heavily involved in the fine arts. I'm in choir, and there's this choir trip to Florida, and I'm going with my friends. That at this point my fear of hell is at like an all-time high. I'm like I need to be saved. Like that was my mindset. And so on basically on most of the trip to Florida, I was like listening to like I was listening to the Passion of the Christ soundtrack as I was like reading the Bible intensely, trying to like make sense of my faith, like trying to find out a way to know that I'm saved without this fear of hell. And as this is happening, I'm just becoming more aware of the inconsistencies that exist within Protestantism, like all these differing beliefs and whatnot. And I'm starting to realize, yeah, Protestantism isn't that great either because it's broken. It's a broken window. There's all these different fractures of Protestantism. But I still wasn't willing to accept Catholicism as like the one true church. Um, I became aware and I accepted the fact that the Catholic Church was the first Christian church, but I didn't think that meant anything. I'm like, well, it doesn't mean anything. If they're wrong, they're wrong. That was my thought process. And so during the Florida trip, when I was in the hotel, I would like be reading the Bible. I would be listening to like YouTube videos, trying to make sense of everything. And yeah, that trip was like a surreal experience because I was just afraid. Outwardly, I was having fun, but inwardly, there was still that like lingering fear of hell. But we get home from the trip, like a few weeks later, I learn about the Catholic like views of Mary, and I was like, that doesn't make any sense. Mary sinless? No way. That's stupid. Mary was a perpetual virgin. Okay, that's a bit more understandable, but I still disagree. The only Marian dogma that I accepted was the divine motherhood. Jesus is God, Mary's the mother of Jesus, therefore Mary's the mother of God. That's the only thing I accepted about Mary that the Catholics believed. Everything else I'm like, why would you pray to her? Why do you think she's sinless? Why do you think that she was assumed into heaven? Why do you think all this stuff? And I became exposed to like the Marian apparitions, the rosary, and all this stuff, and I began to think that this was all just demonic deception. I thought Catholics were deceived by Satan into being distracted by Mary. And so I rejected it. But also at the time, uh, there was this event. My best friend's girlfriend, who is Catholic, and I was dating some at the time. She, my best friend's girlfriend, invites us all for like a double date to her parish and for like an activity. And I'm like exposed to her faith. Like she is like she's very clearly like very strong in her faith, but she's also very she loves Mary so much. And I'm like, how can you like think this stuff? How can you believe in this Mary stuff? I don't understand. I didn't actually ask her that question, but that's just what I was thinking in my mind. Um, as time goes on, I'm becoming more and more uncomfortable as I'm trying to make sense of Protestantism. And so there is this one night when out of just pure curiosity, I'm like, God, please forgive me in advance if this is wrong, but I'm gonna ask Mary for intercession, just to see if this is true, that sort of thing. And so I ask Mary, I'm like, Mary, if you can hear me, please help me make sense of this stuff. Please help me find the truth. And then 2 months later, I make the decision to become Catholic, but the road was still bumpy. All right. She definitely played a role in my salvation. She did something with that prayer, but um, for those 2 months, I was still struggling. But I was struggling towards Catholicism. Like the struggling was now like productive, I guess you could say. I began to watch some videos, like specifically channels like Ascension Presents with Father Mike Schmitz, and then Trent Horn as well, the Council of Trent. Those two were very, very beneficial. I began to learn about what Catholics actually believe about purgatory, um, Mary, the saints, the Pope. Surprisingly, I didn't really object to the Pope that much. I thought the Pope actually made perfect sense. But purgatory, I was like, eh. For the whole saints thing, eh. Mary, eh. Like I was still like warming up to this stuff. But after I graduated high school, we pretty much like a few weeks later, we moved to a new town in Pella. And this was like late June. And I'm still we were just moved in. I'm learning about the Catholic faith and whatnot. And then one night I start to learn about two things in particular. Well, three things. There were two Marian apparitions I was learning about. Our Lady of Guadalupe and Our Lady of Las Lajas, also known as Our Lady of the Rock. And then the third thing was Eucharistic miracles. These three things, there were miracles in all three of them. The Eucharistic miracles, in of itself, they're miracles. Our Lady of Guadalupe was the tilma of Saint Juan Diego, and then Our Lady of the Rock. There was this rock in Las Lajas, like at the site of the apparition. When Mary left, the rock had this beautiful image of like Mary, Jesus, and two saints. One of the saints was Saint Dominic. I don't know what the other saint was, but there was no paint. It wasn't paint. It was just part of the rock. That's a miracle, okay? And once I I accept these things as miracles, I'm like, if this is true, demons can't do this. Demons can't do that. And so I'm like, maybe Catholicism is right. And once I realized that I'm like starting to accept Catholicism, I'm like, maybe I should just become Catholic. And at the time, that wasn't a very practical thing for me to do because my parents were still Lutheran. I am still under their household. Soon I will be moving. At the time, soon I would be moving to college in Ankeny. Um, but I began to watch more videos about Catholicism. I'm warming up more and more to the faith. I still have some objections, but ultimately I am more convinced of Catholicism than I am of Protestantism at this point. And so I eventually tell my parents, I'm like, "Hey, I think I want to become Catholic." And they weren't too pleased. Um, they didn't like that at all. But they weren't angry. They were just like very shocked. And it was like they they might have saw this coming because as I'm like learning about Catholicism, I was like talking about it a little bit. I wasn't like as I was talking about it early on, I wasn't like talking about it as though I wanted to convert. I was talking about it as though like, hey, look, these guys Catholics aren't so stupid as we thought they were, like that sort of thing. But they weren't happy when I told them I wanted to convert. Um, they had me call my pastor and like work things out with him, and he basically told me to read the Augsburg Confessions and to, you know, dive deep into the Lutheran confessions and whatnot. I did. I didn't dive deep as much as I probably should have, but what I did read, it just didn't. It didn't like it was done. It was done. My conversion to Catholicism was inevitable at this point. My Lutheran faith was cooked, you could say, because of that uh, intercessory request to Mary a few months prior. Um, but yeah, I I didn't really find his arguments, my pastor's arguments, compelling. So I didn't tell him that. I didn't tell him that I disagreed with him. I just kind of waved it off and hung up the call. And I told my parents I'm still convinced, and they're like, fine. And so I move into college a few months later, and I make the decision I'm going to go to a parish, and there's two parishes I can go to. I can go to the parish that my best friend's girlfriend took us to, or I can go to a more traditional parish that has more stuff available, like Eucharistic adoration, in Des Moines. I choose the Des Moines one because it also has a Latin mass, and at this point I'm more attracted to the um, more traditional aspects of Catholicism, and so I choose the one in Des Moines. It's called St. Augustine. And so I start RCIA there. I'm still in well, it's OCIA, but I'm still in the process right now. I will be received in the church in a few months, but that's pretty much where I'm at right now. And my parents, ever since, they've taken it very well ever since. That one first interaction was uncomfortable, but ever since it's been fine. Um, there was one weird instance in which I wanted to be like I was considering the priesthood, but that wasn't legitimate. And what I mean by that is I initially went into college to major in cybersecurity. Quickly found out that that's not my thing, and so I'm now at that point I'm like, well, what do I do? I'm not sure what to do, and I was very anxious about like my future finances and like career and whatnot. So I'm like, I don't know what to do. And so I knew that I was very passionate about Catholicism, so I just jumped to the conclusion of I'll become a priest. And so I told my parents this, and they're like shocked, but they take it very well. In fact, their words were We will support you in whatever you do. If God is calling you to be a priest, we will not interfere. That touched me. Hearing that from Lutheran parents, that was awesome to hear that. Now, like I'm not really thinking about becoming a priest anymore at all because that was I talked to my parish priest about it, and he basically said that young men who are converts to the faith can often mistake their passion for the faith as a call to the priesthood. That's pretty much exactly what happened to me. I didn't realize how much I'd be sacrificing if I became a priest because marriage is something I would like to, you know, I'd like to receive the sacrament of matrimony with someone else someday. So, yeah. But my parents have been taking it very well, and I've been very much enjoying OCIA recently. But yeah, that's pretty much my conversion story. Um, I'm looking forward to receiving my first reconciliation in the Eucharist. Yeah. Oh, and as I as I have been taking RCIA classes, I've been watching more like YouTube channels to like reinforce my belief. Like for example, the Catechumen, Cameron Riker, Jimmy Akin. All I was already watching Trent Horn, Ascension Presents, and then what's his name, Scott Hahn, and like Pints with Aquinas. I was watching all these different things, and just uncovering the truth. And as I was uncovering this truth, the fear of hell just dissipated, which is funny because if the Protestant, because according to Protestants, hell is very avoidable. Like if as long as you have faith, you're fine. But according to Catholicism, hell is a much bigger threat. It's much more possible for you to go to hell. But even then, even after accepting Catholicism, despite that, my fear of hell just it's pretty much gone. But yeah, that's pretty much my conversion process right now. Yeah, I just wanted to share that. Um, I got not much more to say. But yeah, big thanks to Our Lady for Mary. Big thanks to Mary for bringing me into the Catholic Church. It was her. Like that one prayer to her out of curiosity. She took that prayer and she turned it into this, into like me becoming Catholic. So yeah, never underestimate Our Lady. Yeah, that's about it. Thank you for watching. If you stayed through the entire video, this is a pretty long video, 22 minutes at this point. Um, yeah, that's about it. Have a good day and God bless.